is party time, Mom. Welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show here in the mothership that is Studio 22. Bigger, badder, better. Pretty much awesome in here. We almost have so much space in this room, I don't know what to do with it. I want to encourage you to do something, though. I need you to go where podcasts are offered. That's right. Go to where podcasts are offered. Listen to me, Grandpa. Here's what you do. There's a podcast app out there that will fit on your phone. It may be Apple Podcast. It could be Google, Android, Stitcher, SoundCloud. There's all these different things that are out there. You just got to get in there in the App Store. If you got an Apple phone, you already have it built in. It's the little purple thing with a little podcast icon on it. Click on that thing. Subscribe to the Chad Prather Show. And even if you watch us on YouTube, go listen to the show. And then scroll down, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating because that's all we allow. You know how we do things around here. You can go to the Chad Prather YouTube channel and subscribe, get your notifications. I hope everybody's doing well today. We're going to get into this whole concept of woke culture when it comes to the movies. I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but movies these days really do suck. I mean, they're horrible. Nobody's making good films anymore. It frustrates me because you go see things because you feel like you got to go see things. Like you got to know what's happening in the Marvel Avengers story, or you got to know who else Rambo's going to kill, or if Rambo's going to die in this movie, or what's Rambo doing today. You know, you got to go just because you got to keep up with the story, or you're just bored, and if you're like me, you just like to eat popcorn and, you know, oversized sodas. But there's nothing good anymore. I will think of, you know, there's a couple of movies that have come out in the last year. I could probably count on one hand that I thought, you know what, that was a good film. That told a good story. It was original, and I liked it. But these days, everything is a remake. And the problem is people are afraid to be creative these days. Of course, the new movie, The Joker, is coming out, or has just recently come out. And, of course, everyone tried to kill that movie before it was ever even released. And I, honest to God, don't care if they did or not. I don't care. You know, the recent movie, The Hunt, they pulled that off before it ever even came out because it was potentially too offensive to the idea of going out and hunting down and killing deplorables or Trump voters. Oh, well, you know, that's the world we live in. Are you motivated by the movies that you watch? Do you go out and watch a movie in order to determine your best practices or the behavior you're going to engage in? Does it make you a psychopath? Does it make you want to go out and hurt someone or cause harm? If so, then you need to go seek help. And I mean the professional kind, and probably get on medication. But these days, let's just be honest, we're living in the woke culture. And even to say that you're woke is an appropriation of culture that's inappropriate, if that's truly going to be the philosophy you live by, because it's a double standard. What do I mean by that? Well, the phrase woke, which means I'm awakened to the cultural appropriate times that we live in, and it comes from the African-American community. In fact, it was popularized by the Black Lives Matter movement. So if you're going to keep using the term woke and you're not black, then shut up. Otherwise, you're appropriating culture. See, you're not as woke as you thought you were. So we're going to get into this woke culture. My buddy Matt Locke from the Matt Locke Show podcast is going to be joining us. Of course, Party Foul Steve will be taking my spot right here in Party Foul's Pub. I hate that we even had to name the bar after him. You know, he's like the guy that came to the Halloween party 10 years ago at your house and just never left. Right there, still dressed up like a party foul. So welcome, my friends. I can hear him murmuring across the studio right now. How dare him? Is your mom, Steve, is your mom watching? Is she listening to the podcast? She probably is, isn't she? What's your mother's first name? Ann, thank you for raising such a fine, upstanding Christian young gentleman. And he's a fantastic human being, and I love him to death. I love him to death. Thank you for raising him right. You guys stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to be sitting down over there in the hot seats over there talking about this thing. There's a number of movies that you loved when you were a kid, and they couldn't make those movies today. They couldn't release those movies today. It's going to be a little walk through memory lane right now of offendedness and things that the woke culture these days are now policing and just won't allow you to laugh at anymore. So God bless America. God bless our freedoms and our freedom of speech, because they're slowly being ripped away from us as the Hollywood culture and the mainstream is telling us who we are, how to believe, and the way we should think. Hang tight. We'll be right back. I love y'all. Guys, we didn't even want to do this segment of the show, not because we don't want to do the topic, but because we were laughing too hard at the topic before we ever even turned the cameras on. And just be thankful that we edited that part out, because we're going to get into the movie culture. More specifically, we want to get into this offended by movies culture, because people are offended by everything. We had our buddy on the other day, Zuby, and Matt Locke sitting here, host of the Matt Locke Show. Zuby was telling us, we were talking about all the things. Of course, he's a black guy, right? At least last I checked.
Racist.
And so we were talking about all the things that are white supremacist and things like that, like powerlifting is now white supremacist, and going to the gym and stuff like that. Like, everything is toxic. Everything. Look at you. Look how much white skin you're showing off right now.
I know. Look at these sexy legs. I mean, I like. Look at these legs.
The fact that you called them sexy legs.
Look at
that's sexist. That's messed up.
I mean, I'm white, but I got a nice tan. I spend a little time on a golf course.
You do. You're white.
I am white.
But the fact that you're trying to appropriate a darker culture and become a person of color by tanning is offensive.
I guess so.
Welcome to the 21st century. I mean, if you go to a tanning bed, that is offensive. If you try to get a tan, that's offensive. Party Foul Steve is appropriating female culture by growing out long hair. The fact that I'm even saying long hair is female.
I'm trying to be more like Jesus every day, so.
You're just starting with the aesthetics?
That's right.
That's really
He's
good.
got the beard.
You got to start somewhere.
That's
look
really
at him. You
good.
kind of do look
but
like
the fact
Jesus.
that you say that you're trying to be like a Gentile Jesus, well, that's anti-Semitic.
Probably so.
It is. And the fact that you assume that the long hair, blonde or blue-eyed Jesus that stares off into heaven with a halo, that anglicized Jesus, that you think that's what he looked like, that's racist too, Steve.
I grew up with his picture in my house hanging on the wall because he
exactly. The
always
fact
watching.
that you grew up in a house, that's offensive.
Yeah.
You had pictures?
Yeah, we had a picture.
You had walls?
We had walls.
You see how stupid this thing is?
Jesus was a carpenter.
We're getting deeper every day.
It literally is. I mean, like, you can be offended by anything. The fact that you're offended by literally nothing means you're offended by everything, and everybody's scared these days. So the big thing that's coming out right now, we want to talk about the movies. I want to get into the movies because the Joker came out, the new Joaquin Phoenix film, which I can see that Hollywood's trying to be edgier and edgier. And by the way, the director of this film said he got out of comedy because of woke culture. That's one of the quotes that came out the other week in an interview, because he was a comedian, and he said, I got out of doing comedy writing, because everybody was too offended by everything. So they come up with this movie, The Joker. Joaquin Phoenix, who is an odd duck. He's an odd cat, but he's an incredible actor. And obviously they're trying to do this origin story of, I mean, how many times can you tell the origin story of the Joker or Batman or Spider-Man
or
just over and over? Superman, we've done it to death. So you got to make it edgier. Well, this is the story of a guy who is, maybe not 100% in terms of the social skills thing going on and whatever his weirdness is in his brain. He doesn't really just fit in society, and try to find himself kind of as a clown, because that gives him a mask in which he can kind of let himself out. And I haven't seen the movie yet. This is basically what I'm taking away from the previews of this thing and the write-ups from it. But he's picked on, he's bullied because he's different, right?
It's today's culture.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
If you're different, obviously the bullies are going to come get you.
Yeah.
And so he fights back. That's the thing. He goes too far. And so now everybody, all the woke culture is saying it's too toxic, saying the movie shouldn't exist. You remember when they had the shooting in Aurora, Colorado, a number of years ago at the Batman Dark Knight at the theater there. It was a tragedy. And so now they're saying that things like this are leading people to glorify violence if they are marginalized or bullied or anything like that. Do you have an initial take on that?
Yeah, did you ever watch a movie as a kid? I mean, you're relatively my age. You watched Star Wars as a kid. The first movie I ever went to see was Star Wars, 1978. I was in the theater. You know,
Mark Hamill, by the way, still a bad actor.
And I saw your little deal on Mark Hamill and may the force be against you or whatever the heck he said, and he meant go F yourself.
He said go force yourself.
Right. But, you know, back then, even when I was 5 years old, I could tell the difference between reality and the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So in my brain, what I take away from this immediately, I was a comic book kid.
Me too.
Loved comic books, DC, Batman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, the Justice League, all that stuff. You know, if you look at the Joker in that context, he's crazy. Mm-hmm. He's always been portrayed as crazy with the screw loose. You know, he's always been the arch nemesis of Batman and Robin. If you watch the old who was the old Batman that just passed away? Adam West.
Adam West.
Yeah, we grew up on those things, and we all knew they were fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, you look at all of these woke people. Can they not tell?
Yeah.
Do they have a hard time? Is this the social media, internet generation where they can't tell what's real and what's not? I go on to Twitter probably way too often, but I know that's not the real world.
Yeah.
You know, I try to get back from that. If I want to go to the movies, I want to be taken out of my world for a couple hours.
Right.
That's why you go to a movie, right? You want to be entertained. You want to forget about politics, which we do all the time. You want to forget about the world. You want to go and be entertained. Now we're watching in sports. Now we're watching in our movies. Now you can't be entertained. You got to be offended.
One of the things we're going to get into here in a few moments is movies that we all grew up watching and loved that you could never release today. So we're going to go through that list in a little while. So what you're saying, though, Matt, is you went to a Superman movie, you didn't come home and jump off the building thinking that you could fly.
Right, because it's impossible.
Right.
You know, I have a brain. I know that I'm not from Krypton. Yeah. The sun doesn't strengthen me. I know that he's a superhero. Batman's a billionaire who has all these gadgets and capes and all that stuff. He can't fly either. I mean, it's make-believe. It's easy to tell the two apart for me.
Yeah, this Todd Phillips, who was the director of The Joker, I alluded to this. He said, go try to be funny nowadays with this woke culture. There were articles written about why comedies don't work anymore. I'll tell you why. Because all the effing funny guys are like, F this S because I don't want to offend you. It's hard to argue with 30 million people on Twitter. You just can't do it, right? So you just go, I'm out. And you know what? With all my comedies, I think that what comedies in general all have in common is they're irreverent. And that's why I always say, I ain't apologizing.
Yeah, you're a comedian, and think about a Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Or I just saw today, Eddie Murphy is getting ready to start back up on his stand-up routine. He says, look, I don't care if you're offended or not. I'm going to do comedy. If you don't like it, don't come see me.
Yeah, and although he has said he regrets some of the things he did back in the 80s with Delirious and Raw.
It was raunchy.
He said, I was going through a bad time, a breakup, broken heart, and blah, blah, blah. Don't excuse it, Eddie. Just do it, Eddie.
Maybe a little cocaine.
Come on, Eddie. Did a lot of cocaine.
A bump or two.
But so you have this Joker movie coming out, and they're saying this is taking it like a step further. Like this time it's really like the Army came out, and the Stars and Stripes newspaper, the U.S. military newspaper came out and was talking about disturbing and very specific chatter on the dark web, and it tipped off Texas law enforcement and the FBI to the possible targeting of a theater during the Joker's October 4th release. Hey, don't go see the movie. Let them win.
When you said it, do you think that with the Dark Knight and the shooter out in Aurora, that's
crazy people out there
that's playing into what they're seeing now? Do you think they're taking that and saying, okay, this happened then, maybe we'll get out in front of it. Let's cover our bases. Let's make sure we tell people to be at least, aware of what may be going on around them. And there might be Fruit Loops that want to come to the theater.
Like I can remember a couple of years ago, they used to do these things around December. They would come on and these little news reports would come on and say, be careful when you buy your kids these toys. And like, for instance, they had this little Nerf dart gun that you could put a sharpened pencil in and shoot the pencil out and it would stick into the wall. And I'm like, well, you know what? My kid didn't have any idea doing that until you just showed him how. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing. It's like, why are you continually putting ideas in these psychopaths and sociopaths' minds that are out there? Just quit talking about it. Quit glorifying it. Quit talking about it. And that's the thing that bugs me, man. I don't know. There were people, families of the Aurora shooting victims, and God bless them, and God goes, my heart goes out to them. Sent a letter to Warner Brothers back on September 24th, said, they asked the studio to stand publicly against gun violence and donate to organizations that aid victims of gun violence. Did you see, I just saw in the newspaper here in the last day or two, court settlement's going to award the victims and their families $800 million.
I saw that too.
Almost $1 billion.
In my opinion,
this tragedy.
Do you think that's what should have happened? I mean, do you think that was the way to do it? I mean, I feel bad about it. We all talk about gun violence.
Yeah.
There are crazy people out there. I carry, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm going to protect myself, but should we be handing out $800 million?
Right, I agree.
Is it something that should be standard now?
And again, my heart, like I said, my heart goes out to them.
Absolutely.
But, we recently had that movie, The Hunt, which was kind of a thing about targeting. Like, they pull that movie because it was supposedly targeting conservatives, as the Trump supporters, not because they're you put them out in the woods and you go hunt them. Excuse me, and you're trying to kill them, and I'm like, you don't pull the movie because of it. I mean, let's have a real life hunt if you want to. You're carrying, I'm carrying, Steve's carrying, all God's children are carrying.
Do you ever
I'm carrying Candice, the queen of the Ethiopians?
Do you ever find it interesting how the left kind of fantasizes about things when you really start digging into these stories and the hunt and the movies? And, you've got, who was it, the grumpy old man? It's not Pacino, it's the other guy. De Niro, who goes out there and throws the F-bombs around and acts like a moron and says he hates Trump. Okay, we know you do. Yeah. I mean, if you run out of a vocabulary, you're an actor. You're supposed to know words, right? That's what you get paid to do.
And TMZ just came out with a report about him being accused by a former assistant of not only harassment, but sexual harassment as well as verbal abuse and these things.
Was it Party Foul Steve?
It wasn't Party Foul Steve.
No.
Although there are plenty of things that could come out against Party Foul Steve.
I think De Niro's still acting. When he went on the news and was dropping the F-bombs, I think all that was an act. I think it's just
gets him in the news cycle.
He's in the news
by the
cycle.
way, he's in this new Joker movie too. Don't forget. So there's that.
Exactly.
I mean,
there's a reason.
The question comes up though when you talk about this violence, which it has happened, like with this Aurora thing. Should the artist be held responsible when the evil actions are blamed on their art? No, absolutely not.
Just like the gun manufacturers, just like the car manufacturers, just like the knife manufacturers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start doing that, you're going to set a whole new precedent for what? And that's what the left wants, Chad. They want to shut these things down. So go after the people who make them.
Well, that's my thing. If I go out there and create a piece of art, I'm not responsible for how you choose to interpret it. Right. Pablo Picasso went out and created quote unquote art. Looks like crap to me. I mean,
a fan.
But it's not his fault that I think it looks like crap. Right. It's just not my form of art. I don't see it. But that's the world we've gotten into, man. And here's the thing. I don't want to offend you. Like, I actually kind of do want to offend you. Like,
you can't offend me.
I know I can't, not you, but my personality, anybody that knows me, my wife always calls this my flaw, and that is when I meet people, I want to see how far I can push them. I don't want to push you over the edge. I just want to know where your threshold is.
Right.
Like, where can we go that's funny? Mm-hmm. How far can we go? And then I'll pull back. But see, it's dangerous these days. You
got to be, they're woke.
Yeah.
Whatever that.
So woke.
They finally got out of bed, I guess.
I want to do, and we're going to do it, and I'm talking to Candice about this. Candice, get the microphone by your face there. I want to do a talk about, I want to walk you through the day in the life of when a woke wakes up. Okay? Now, what does that mean? When a woke wakes up.
That's a lot of woke wakes.
It's a lot of wake and woke. So when a woke wakes up, and I want Candice, she's going to help me. We're going to compile a list of what would happen if you went to sleep and tomorrow you woke up in a whole new world. It was a woke world. What would that woke world look like?
We could title it, It's a Woke World After All.
It's a woke world.
On
See,
the ball.
See, right there is why Candice makes at least Chick-fil-A wages.
Exactly.
Yes.
At least.
Don't talk about Jesus.
No, but that would be really interesting just to see all the little wishes and
all the little things that we wish, it would change language. You would walk outside of your house. There'd be a bicycle. There wouldn't be an automobile.
Yeah.
But there's just all these little things and just the pitfalls that come with living in a woke world. I think we're on to something genius here, Candice.
So where is the woke world at? Is it in cold weather or warm weather?
Well, that's a good question, too.
I mean, where are we going to put this woke world in D.C.? Is it going to be north or south? Are we going to
Well,
sweat or are
it's-
we going to freeze?
You know, I
You gotta
mean,
have to
it's a
go right in the
world in
middle.
which climate change has been, stopped.
Oh, annihilated.
So it's been annihilated. It's a woke world. So
Temperature no longer matters.
it doesn't matter. There
Is no temperature anymore.
we don't even
Yeah,
look at
no.
temperature.
Oh,
We don't
okay.
even count. It's like, it's cold. What's cold?
Okay.
We don't see
so who knows?
temperature here.
We're thinking this thing out loud.
Yeah.
A woke world. In other words, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But let's talk about, how old are you, Matt?
45.
I'm 46. Steve's 49.
God, he's old.
He's old.
Oh,
He's almost as old as Jesus.
I'll be starting to look like him, too.
He is.
I'll be 47 here in another month and a half. And Candice, she's 23.
Oh, you're a baby.
Mark Tate's
she's the boss.
29.
Ish.
26.
I knew that. 26 years old.
Puppies over there.
I was doing a dyslexic 29. I know. We grew up on some movies, man.
Some great movies.
We grew up trying to get Cinemax to come in between the channels. You know how you would
Yes.
twist it? It would just kind of hang there in the middle.
Yes.
And you could see Lady Chatterley's lover in the little squiggly lines, and then pray to God your mother doesn't get out of bed and come back there to check on you.
Yes, sir.
And, it's so, like, you could remember you get up in those cable channels way up in there, and it was like just the lines were going up, but you were like, I know what they're doing in there.
Yeah.
And it's just the idea that you were looking. That was naughty.
Yes.
It was stuff. You had Cinemax After Dark and just all kind of naughty stuff that was out there. But even the stuff that y'all watched, the stuff you, Mom and Dad, stuff y'all watched, you couldn't release those movies today. We were just talking about the great Tom Hanks movie,
Yes.
Bachelor Party.
Yes.
My all-time favorite movies where Tom Hanks was going to get married to Tawny Kitaen.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a bachelor party with chicks and guns and fire trucks. And it was, he was trying to be faithful to his girl, but these guys were just having a raunchy thing. They gave a bunch of drugs to the donkey during the donkey dance sex act with the prostitute, and the donkey died, and they had to haul the donkey out. And, like, where's PETA on that? And they're using all these illicit drugs. And
How many woke things have you went over already
I
just
know.
by saying those
I
four
know.
sentences?
And then they go to the guy who is the pimp to buy the hookers for the
Yes.
thing, and he's this little Indian guy, and he goes, "You do not bring my hookers back. Milt come for you." And then they're like, "Milt," and he goes, "Dish being Milt," and Milt bangs his head through the glass, and then the little guy walks away, and he's like, he goes, "You not turn my hookers, Milt cut your balls off."
Yeah.
He goes, "I just bet my balls, and I shook on it."
Good old days. Drugs,
Those were
paraphernalia,
funny,
donkeys,
man.
pianos,
mean,
hookers.
Yeah, they're watching stag films. Do you even know what a stag film is, Candice?
She does.
It's a porno, but it's on a reel-to-reel.
What's a reel-to-reel?
What's a reel-to-reel? That
9mm,
you're in the
9mm
business.
film.
Yeah, so, you're watching this stuff. It's great. And then, but remember Blazing Saddles?
Oh, my God. Classic.
You couldn't do
Boots.
Blazing Saddles.
Got to do it with your boots on. I mean, you can't have those movies anymore,
Yeah.
Chad. And that is an all-time. I remember watching Blazing Saddles. I was probably 14.
Yeah.
And not old enough to be watching that movie.
Yeah.
And my parents back then, and I know you probably know this too, they thought it was a big deal. My mom and dad got a laser disc player.
Oh, yeah.
You remember those?
yeah.
And it had a wired controller. You know how you got wireless remotes now? It had a wired remote, if that tells you anything. And the first movie we watched on it was Saturday Night Fever.
Okay.
But we would watch all these movies. My dad, every weekend, it was a deal in our house. He would go down to the video store, which was the laser disc place at the time.
Right.
And remember, they also had it wasn't the VHS, it was the beta version of all the movies that came after that. But we would watch a movie on laser disc every weekend.
Remember that?
And I remember watching Blazing Saddles with my mom and dad.
And people would get mad, like the woke culture would get mad that we even laugh at Blazing Saddles right now. Like, how dare you even think that's still humorous? Well, I see, my thing has always been, you got to interpret people according to the times in which they live in.
Yes.
Okay? Because you want to, these days you want to cancel culture, you want to get rid of somebody because they tweeted something a few years ago, or they were in a movie 7 years ago that was this or that. But there's some stuff out there that, like, I mean, the pervasive use of the N-word in Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
That's that. And, do we advocate for that? No. But, I mean, it's funny. You've got how Mel Brooks, who was is a comedic genius.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, my mother hated it. She's like, "Oh my God, you can't watch anything by Mel Brooks because he did the 10 Commandments."
Yes.
Like
Didn't come in our house.
yeah, exactly.
Go to my friend's house
You know,
to
it's
watch
like,
that.
the sheriff is a gondong, and the church bell would go off, you know. And so you see that stuff, and you could never do that. Could never do that
The
these
amazing
days.
thing to me, if you look at that and you look at today's modern rap music,
Yeah,
it's way worse than anything that came out of Blazing Saddles.
yeah,
You know, and everybody's okay with that. It's the new woke generation of let's talk about beating our hoes and,
Yeah.
you know, all of our side hustles and our street game and all that stuff. But they're offended by a movie that is satirical
yeah.
toward the Western culture.
But do you know who one of the primary writers was for that movie?
I don't.
Richard Pryor.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Richard Pryor was a writer for that. And, of course, you had, you know, when the bad guys are reading off the resumes and they're reading off, they're trying to hire bandits, and the guy goes, you listed that you like rape twice. Candace is over there cringing. I told you we're going to get in trouble on that one.
Well, I'll tell you what. What's your favorite Richard Pryor? Speaking of Richard Pryor,
Yeah.
my favorite Richard Pryor movie, Harlem Nights.
Harlem Nights was
That
good.
was a
With,
classic movie.
With, Della Reese
Reese.
and Red Fox
I'm gonna cut you quick.
and Eddie
I'm
Murphy.
gonna cut you quick. Now you done and did it. I'm gonna
Yeah,
cut you quick.
shot me in my pinky toe. I love it, man.
I love that
was,
movie.
like, Red Fox, if you go back and watch the old stuff, the Red Fox, you know what? Red Fox go on stage. You get on YouTube and watch the old Fox stuff. He's always smoking on stage, right? Had his pack, had on his table. He was always smoking Parliament cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
You know why? Because they have a hole in the end of them, and that's where he kept his cocaine. And so if you
No
ever see him do
kidding.
like this, he's sniffing his cocaine out of the back of his cigarette. He's a thinker.
Oh my! An innovator.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Clever guy.
He'd grab a cigarette out and he'd be like, you watch him.
I got to
always-
go back now and watch.
He was snorting cocaine out of the end of the cigarette.
I never knew that.
I know. Sammy Davis Jr., babe. Sammy's his whole mouth thing that he was doing, babe. It's all cocaine. I can't do it. I can't do a Sammy, babe. That was the deal. His mouth, he couldn't control his mouth.
I did not know that.
Cocaine, man.
You're a wealth of knowledge, this
I
Chad
am.
Prather.
That's why we call it apple juice. Dean Martin, he didn't drink whiskey on stage or scotch on stage. He drank apple juice. Everybody thought he was drinking whiskey.
But it was
Otherwise-
apple juice.
We're all getting woke today.
Yeah, woke. I mean, we're woke
You're
up.
woken us up.
Mm-hmm. So, see, that's the culture you grew up in, folks. Red Fox used to say, don't act like you're offended when you come in here. Did you see Triple X out on the marquee? Because when he would go out there, they would put Triple X. It was a Triple X comedy show. I mean, it was rough. But then you got stuff like the Bad News Bears. Like, we watched that, and we're like, oh, it's a bunch of kids playing Little League.
Right.
But you forget how much language is in that thing.
Oh, and how bullying,
Yeah.
and you really look at all of the things that are going on with these kids today. Oh, yeah.
And they finally win a game, and they got their, Walter Matthau was their alcoholic coach, and they
Yep.
got beer, and they're spraying it all over
Yep.
each other in their celebration. You can't do that stuff.
But we survived.
Yeah.
And, we
Here we
did.
are.
We weren't offended by everything.
Oh.
You've got, talking about Richard Pryor. Like, I love the Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder movies.
Oh, yes.
Gene Wilder, hands down, one of the funniest people.
Oh,
I mean, just his part in Blazing Saddles was
Yes.
unreal.
unbelievable.
It's just so funny when I think about the stuff. But Silver Streak was one that they did, and they got he played the character George Caldwell. People need to go back and watch some of these movies.
They're great.
Well, you're like, what's wrong with Silver Streak? Because they're on this fast train.
Yep.
Get off the train. They got to sneak him back on. So what do? They put him in blackface.
Of course they do.
They put him in blackface. You can't do that these days.
Yeah, it's against the rules.
No, you can't do that stuff. There was another one. What was the C. Thomas Howell movie?
Oh, Weird Science.
No, that one. No. That
talking
wasn't
about
that
that?
one. That wasn't that one. It was. I got it in here. It's.
Is it in here?
Oh, I think it is in here. Let's see.
He was in so many. I mean, if you look at all these actors, we were just talking about it because I just saw C. Thomas Howell on TV the other day.
Yeah.
And he's old.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because you think back to when you were a kid and all of these movies hit you in some way, shape, or form. And now we see the guy who was in 16 Candles, Weird Science.
Yeah.
He was in all of these really great 80s movies, and he's 50. And you're like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm old.
No, that was. But there was a C. Thomas Howell movie. He played the entire movie in blackface.
Oh,
He was trying to get. He had to get the Harvard scholarship.
yeah. What
And
was
that was the
movie?
deal, and it was like 60. I remember it was $60,000 a year or whatever to go to Harvard, but he could get it if he was a black person.
Yes.
So he dressed up in blackface, put on the afro and stuff like that.
I do
Can't make that movie these days.
No.
Can't do that. National Lampoon's Animal House.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Belushi. Was that
What a
Belushi?
movie that was.
Unbelievable.
Every scene was offensive. Every scene
It was meant to be.
was supposed to be.
Right. It was
That
the
was a
whole,
National Lampoon's
yeah,
movie.
It was the whole point of the movie.
Yeah. You can't, I mean, so you remember when they go into the black bar, the soul bar or whatever, and they're
Yes.
sitting around and it's all what's up blood and all this stuff. Can't do that anymore. You got these white people trying to appropriate black culture just so they don't get, cut by a razor or something like that.
Well, they're not. The Corn Pops out there banging his razor on the curb, banging that razor. Yeah.
Corn Pop out there getting it rusty, man.
Corn Pop was just the prelude to the National Lampoon's Animal House.
I know.
And maybe that was what Biden was thinking.
Yeah. And I mean, you're having sex with the professor,
Yeah, that's
and
unheard of.
Donald Sutherland played that role, and he was the. Funny
There's always
stuff.
the one virgin that's trying to get
Yeah.
paid.
Yeah.
Speaking of virgins, there was a movie that I just thought of called not the 40-year-old virgin, The Last American Virgin. That was a little
You're
B.
dating yourself there.
Yeah, that's an old one.
That's
Last-
gotta be early 80s.
That's old, dude.
Yeah, old.
Where the guy was doing everything he could to get laid, and I'll never forget that movie because his big fat friend, like they finally hire a prostitute, right? And his fat friend. Like this guy, no matter what he does, this guy can't get laid. And so they hire the prostitute. She takes the big fat friend into the bedroom, and they're looking through the keyhole of the bedroom, and all they can see is his big fat white blobby body on top of her. And all you can see is one like dead arm sticking out from underneath his fat blob, and he's just up and down and up and down.
Kids, turn away. Hey, mom and dad, you might want to turn this off for a minute. Yeah, but
True, man. That's the stuff.
that's what we laughed about, and we knew. And you didn't see anything, but you knew. I mean, come on. What did any of you? Here's one of those things. Did you ever walk in on your mom and dad?
I don't want to talk about this right now. I want to go back to movies.
Yeah, I did.
I didn't.
I know
My
you
parents
did.
Never did it.
Oh my God.
Mine either. Mine didn't.
Come on.
Mine
So,
didn't.
but that's
I got
the whole
conceived,
thing.
and that was
You
it. Immaculately.
You knew it happened, and you knew it. And the funny thing is, we all grew up in that time where you snuck a peek at Dad's Playboys.
Mm-hmm.
Because back when I grew up, internet wasn't a thing. You couldn't go to the internet and
It was
look
my
up
brother's Playboys. My dad didn't.
Pornhub or any of that stuff. You had to go sneak a look in Dad's sock drawer for the latest Playboy issue. And back then, I mean, think about it. Playboy was an institution.
Sure.
And it was amazing. I mean, the articles were good. Now, there were pretty girls naked within the deal, which I don't even think now. Does Playboy even exist now?
It exists, but
They don't do
nudity.
naked pictures
I
anymore.
think there was some talk about him bringing some of the nudity back. It was more like a Maxim magazine type of spread.
Kind of the racy.
Yeah.
You get a little bit and we'll get you there, but not all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, whether it wasn't my dad, but I had friends who had those dads, and yeah, there was that.
Yeah.
Here's one of my all-time favorite movies. Main character Nathan R. Johnson, The Jerk. Steve Martin, hands down, comic genius. You mean I'm gonna stay this color? Here's this sharecropping family, this black family, and they've got this white baby that's left on their doorstep, raise him as their own. He has no rhythm.
Yeah.
That right there.
Yep.
Like, that's racially sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, they're all out on the front porch, and they're playing their music, and they've all got rhythm, and he doesn't. Yep. I mean, the fact that you would say that all black people have rhythm, that's.
I know a few black people that don't have any rhythm.
Well, is Kevin Wade listening to this?
I don't know Kevin Wade.
Yeah, you know Kevin Wade, K-Dub. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Kevin may have all the rhythm in the world. I don't know.
He can fly a fighter jet. I think.
Yeah, he can
he's
fly a
probably
fighter
got
jet.
Pretty good rhythm.
But no, like that in and of itself, he's talking to his mother, and he's like, "You mean I'm going to stay this color?" But it's funny because I could go on and on and on with this stuff, but it's just absolutely crazy. You couldn't do that today.
Well, and today,
But like, let me say, like, if you wanted to watch The Jerk or Blazing Saddles, you could go find them
somewhere, yeah, on the internet or.
I saw on Netflix a couple of weeks ago that Blazing Saddles is actually one of the top recommended movies on the thing, and I was shocked.
That doesn't surprise
that
me.
it had it on there. I was like, wow. But you can't find Tom Hanks's bachelor party.
No, and you said that, and that's like a dinosaur. It's
yeah, you can't find it anywhere.
I don't know where you would look.
I'd love to watch it. I want to show my kids.
Yeah, how old are your kids?
Not old enough. Not old enough to watch it.
Yeah,
they're 21 and down.
Perfect.
Somebody should post a link if they know where that movie's at.
Yeah, if you know like how to get that thing. Do you remember what was the movie? Airplane.
Classic.
Like I got one of my sons. He's like, Airplane 2 is way better than Airplane.
Never.
I'm like, come on.
Did you smack him in the back of his head? The first one's always the best.
And it's like, and I'm like, I can't believe he watched the movie. Have you ever been to a Turkish prison? You like gladiator movies?
Roger.
Yeah.
Roger.
And then when they're talking, it's so funny when they're talking. Oh God, what was it they were doing when they were doing Hey Blood?
Oh yeah, what were they doing?
Not street, not
It's been so long since I've watched that movie.
Talking Soul or whatever it was.
Wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that movie?
Yeah.
Back before, was he still Lou Alcindor at the time?
No, he was Kareem.
Did he transform?
Yeah, he was Kareem at that point in time. But when they're talking, oh God, I can't even think.
Well, but who was the guy that was in the Naked Gun? Leslie
Nielsen. Yeah.
That guy made a career out of that stupid slapstick, offhand remarks. And like you said, when you look at Airplane, all of the offhand remarks that would not fly today.
Yeah.
All of the racial tinge, every group they made fun of. No one was out of their political genius.
Exactly.
And today, we've lost that. I think we've lost in today's movies creativity. Original, being an original.
Well, that's why you're just remaking stuff.
Yeah, we rehash everything. We're rehashing Top Gun, one of the greatest movies of all time. We're going to rehash it. And I saw the preview of it the other day, and I'm like, it's the same movie. I don't want to watch it again. I liked it in 1986.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch the same movie again in 2019. Let's be original.
Well, it's just like when I go out to L.A. and I'm meeting with the studios and I'm meeting with all these folks out in Hollywood, and you go up and down the Sunset Boulevard, and you go down, Hollywood Boulevard, you go all these places, and they billboards everywhere, and they just rent the entire side of the building, and they just paper it with what's coming out new, the new shows on TV, and it's just everywhere, right? Just over the top with these billboards and everything. And what do you see? Magnum PI. CBS brought Magnum PI back with
Hawaii Five-0 brought back. They're bringing back all these old shows that they were good in their genre, in their era.
Yeah.
And now that you bring them back, it's like, all right, because I like Magnum PI.
Right.
And the new Magnum PI brought back Higgins as a woman because we're woke. Yeah. Higgins was a British man, and he made Magnum who he was. And now they bring that character back as a woman, and it's like, that's all wrong.
Yeah.
Because Magnum's out there chasing skirts. He doesn't need a woman to work for. Right. He got plenty of women. Mm-hmm. He needed a guy to keep him in line. Party foul Steve. See? That's how it works.
Same with
they're rewriting.
Bruce Wayne.
They're essentially rewriting history.
Yep.
Just like this woke culture is trying to do.
There's so many lists of things. Steve's favorite movie was Porky's.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites. God. I couldn't watch it at home. Never watched it at home. Had to go to a friend's house and watch it.
Now, wasn't that set like in Louisiana or the swamp?
Yeah,
remember the stilts and the docks and all the stuff.
Had to go across to go over to the bad.
Yep.
Across the county line or whatever.
Yeah, had to go across the
need to rewatch. I hadn't watched it in 40 years.
River, and it was set like in the
Maybe
50s
35.
or whatever.
Yeah, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, something like that, when it was just so taboo to be, it was just making fun of that kind of that closeted crazy culture that, everybody, the idea that back in the 40s and 50s, everybody was so buttoned up and buttoned down that there was nothing going on. Everything was puritanical and Victorian, and there was nobody getting into trouble. And this just proves that just wasn't true.
Well, if I remember well, too, with Porky's, it was the first time I'd ever seen the Klan, because the Klan was featured in Porky's. And of course, I grew up in rural Indiana.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw that was at my friend's house too, probably 15, 16 years old. But it was the first time I'd ever heard of the Ku Klux Klan. And it was very prevalent in that movies because, like you said, they were trying to make fun of that buttoned up, tight, backwoods people of the Baptist faith, or the Hallelujah, all that stuff that was come with Porky's. But it was a coming of age movie.
Yeah,
these boys are all running around the same thing. They're trying to find some naked girl.
They're trying to see boobs.
You're right. They're trying to find some breasticles.
Found a place to sneak.
Still looking
underneath.
at boobs.
Did it stop?
Maybe that's movie's fault. So
It probably is. You just haven't gotten out of your adolescence,
nope,
Steve.
Don't plan on it.
They'd sneak underneath the locker rooms and pull up under the showers, and they had a hole that they could. That was their whole deal, and the whole movie was built around that. And one of those boys will be boys kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the culture. And even then, I recommend a good book to everybody. Ben Shapiro has a book that he wrote just after he had gotten. I think he was getting his master's degree when he wrote this book. But it was about Hollywood and how the left has always tried to influence people through Hollywood.
Sure.
And he went in, here's a Jewish guy from UCLA in a master's program or a law program, and he went in and he interviewed all these Hollywood executives. And, of course, they obviously thought he was one of them. He was a liberal because here's a Jewish, legal law student, from UCLA. They assumed. And so they told him a lot of things. What's the name of that book, Candace? Look it up. Get online.
Well, and you're right. As we watch these newer movies today, you were talking about the Joker. I watched Aquaman, big comic book guy, like I said. There must have been, I would say, at least a dozen references to global warming, climate change, garbage in the ocean, all of that stuff. Hollywood is using culture to dictate policy, and they've been doing it for decades. It's nothing unusual. So I've not read that book. I'll have to grab that book.
It's in depth. It's
bet
a
it
pretty
is.
heavy treatise.
Yeah, I'm watching Shameless right now, and they started political kind of stuff.
Of course they did.
That.
My wife loved that. She watched that. She tried to get me to watch it. I'm not into that stuff, but I'll tell you what I was into: Caddyshack.
Caddyshack couldn't do that one
Best
today.
golf movie made for the time frame. Come on, Chevy Chase. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, that movie is classic gold. And who was the judge that was always
Ted Knight.
Yes, yeah. Ted Knight. I mean, what a great cast.
Yeah.
And you spent the whole time waiting to see that young little girl's,
Tatas. Yeah.
You spent the whole movie.
And then they're smoking marijuana, and it's like, man, this is good pot. And he goes, yeah, of course I brought it off of a Negro. I mean, that's what he says in the movie. That's racist. I mean, you say things like that, and then people are like, oh, my God, you could never say that these days. But that's the whole thing. What's the name of that book?
Primetime Propaganda.
Primetime Propaganda. Yeah.
Primetime Propaganda.
You got to get that book, Shapiro.
Oh, there you go.
Tootsie, remember Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman? Dressed up like a woman the whole time.
See, but right there, that's against the cross-dressing, cis, gender bender, whatever you feel like. I took a survey this morning, Steve, and it asked me what my gender was, male, female, or other.
All right, and what did you put? Did you put other?
No, I put male, because I know what
exactly, because there's two genders, male and female.
But think about that. Back then, you've got a man.
Yeah.
Who is acting like a woman
to get a job.
Yeah. It's today's world. It's amazing if you think about how forward they were back then. Yeah. If you come to today's time.
I mean, hey, enter the Olympics. You can do that.
I've heard.
Or whatever.
What was it, the powerlifting?
No, Zuby, yeah. Zuby did the weightlifting thing. And that's, he broke the women's deadlift record. The Toy, speaking of Richard Pryor. Great movie.
That was a good one.
Great movie.
Jackie Gleason.
Mm-hmm.
Bought a black man as a toy for his young son, his spoiled son. You can't make that these days. That's the crazy thing. Now, I think the bigger question comes up is, should a movie like that be made today? Should a movie like that be made today? Or is it okay that it's in the past, let's leave it in the past, and let's never get back to that point?
Why not?
I mean, I'm kind of at that thing, and I'm like, I'm okay if you stereotype white people. I'm okay. I mean, but I think that's the bigger question, and I don't know that we answer it here. I think that's something that people in their head, if they're listening or watching this thing, you got to answer it. Should a movie like that be made? Should movies like The Joker be made, which really deal with the dark parts of our human psyche and nature, should they be made? Again, I go back to, now look, I know plenty of people in the African American community. I know plenty of people in the Asian community. They can laugh at the stereotypes.
Yeah.
They can laugh at the, we can laugh at the stereotypes. But should we? Should we be able to do that? I don't know. But I'm just saying, these are things you can't make these days. We were talking about Michael Keaton's Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
You're like, what in the world's wrong with Mr. Mom? Here's a guy who decides to stay at home and be a dad. Because it's all about the stereotyping the roles of men and women in the home.
I think I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch these, 30 movies. I'm going to marathon them.
That's a good weekend there.
A great weekend.
I know. Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, classic. Who was the main character in that? Gilbert and well, it was the dude that played Goose.
Lewis. Gilbert and Lewis.
Gilbert and Lewis. But
Who was Robert Carradine.
Yeah, Robert Carradine.
And then it was
Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Goose.
Yeah.
From Top Gun.
Goose. And
Booger.
Yeah.
Well, but think about that too. What a great, here you got a bunch of outcasts in college who you've got the stereotypical jocks that are the alpha beta fraternity. And here you got the nerds who all, and what they do? The tri-lambs, and they're all gadgets, and you got an Asian guy, and you got Booger, and the guy that played, and and they go through all of these Special Olympics. Come on. What fun would it be to go to a high school track, get onto a tricycle, and chug a beer every lap? I want to try it. I want to try it once just to say I did it. What a great movie. And, of course, all the fundraising and the stuff and the pie. Yeah. Remember the pie? Oh, the pie. The pie. And he starts, ogre. Oh, the pie. Oh, it's Nancy or Betty or whatever her name was.
And they hook the closed-circuit cameras up into the sorority house.
No, that's illegal. You got closed-circuit cameras in the sorority house.
I won't say what, there's a classic line that Booger says in the thing, we've got. Yeah. And so it's just one of the guys where the girl in high school dresses up like a boy because she's trying to go to the other school. And then, anyway, I could get it.
The thing about it is, do those movies make it okay to do those things?
Well, no.
Exactly.
Like, who in their right mind? Who in their right mind back then, in our mindset, who in their right mind, like C. Thomas Howell, would put on an afro and blackface and trying to get a scholarship to Harvard? Yeah. It's one of those, it's like Meet the Fockers. It's one of those, this guy's destined to fail, but he's going to learn a lesson through the failure.
Yes.
He's going to do something absolutely asinine and stupid. That was the character lesson of these movies. Yep. The underdog was going to win. And it wasn't like, oh, my gosh, I'm going to go dress up like a girl in order to get a job in the whole thing. I'm not going to get a Barbie doll and some cutouts from a magazine and create Kelly LeBrock like they did in Weird Science.
Yeah.
And now I own my own full-size, life-size doll, which is just this euphemism for the adolescent male who's like, I'm in this fantasy world with a woman that doesn't exist, which is this whole thing. Oh, Fats, man, last year I was insane for this crazy little 8th grade. Insane? Crazy? Insane?
I like it. I like that. You got a great memory for something.
Oh, dude, I grew up on these movies.
Some of these lines I remember, some I don't, but
I might have watched these movies yesterday or something. Those
like
lines.
He got prepared. He did some show prep.
Bro, listen, television taught me things. Crocodile Dundee, where he's in the bar.
Yeah.
And he's over there and he's talking to the lady. He's like, yeah, I'm over here talking to Sheila. And his cabbie goes,
yep.
It's a guy. And he goes, what? And he goes, he's a
Can't say that.
Can't say that.
Can't say that.
And that's the way he says it.
Hey, bleep that out, would you?
The New York cabbie, he's a
Yep.
And again, these days, you can cross-dress and not even be gay.
Right.
But that back then, that's the way it was thought of.
Yeah.
And so he goes over there and grabs him in the crotch, and he's like, hey, he's not a Sheila. So that's this whole, those are the things you can't do now these days. And not to mention the toxic masculinity. Soul Man, that's the name of that movie with C. Thomas Howell.
Yes. Soul Man.
Soul Man.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway.
You finally found it. 3 Men and a Baby.
What about
Big?
Big? What was wrong with Big? Tom
Classic
Hanks.
Movies. Playing the big piano.
Yeah.
You got the little psychic. What is wrong with a movie like that where, you want to be, you want to go back to your adolescent.
Yeah, but what was wrong with it is she had sex with him. She was an executive in this big company, and she had sex with a 10-year-old boy.
Well,
It was
he
in an
wasn't
adult's
he
body.
wasn't 10 years old, though.
Yeah, but
his
he
body
grew
wasn't
up.
10.
Weird, man.
It is great.
The Zoltan.
The Zoltan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's so many other great movies, too. If you were, 16 Candles. You get back to these movies where
You're showing off the girl's panties. You buy it? Yeah.
But Molly Ringwald.
Very hot.
Molly
Ringwald.
who did in this room did not have a crush on Molly Ringwald when they were a boy?
Yeah, Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah.
I like when Anthony Michael Hall got shot sitting on the toilet in Yellowstone. You'll see that in the final episode.
No, I don't. I've
you
never
just
watched
blew
it.
the whole final episode.
There you
I've
go.
never
Really
watched
didn't
it.
blow the entire episode.
Spoiler alert. That's
But
hilarious.
all of these movies had one goal in common.
In your mind, I can only
No, I
imagine.
think they were always in pursuit of one thing: the girl.
Oh, I thought he was going to say entertainment.
No,
Not necessarily.
I just think that was the.
Because in 16 Candles, she was in pursuit of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But okay,
Yes, she was.
Because remember, she's sitting there and she's like, hey, at least you don't have to sleep in a bed. You don't have to sleep underneath a duck's dork or whatever. Because you remember the Asian long duck dong?
Yes.
And he's like, and the Asian stereotypes that are in there. What's your name? Dong. What's your last name? Long. What's your middle name? Duck. So anyway,
sexual driven.
we got to get out of here. Matlock, host of the Matlock Show. Get on there. Thanks for hanging out with us. You send us some messages because I know that you probably got your own movies that couldn't be made these days, and that's okay. It's okay. Laugh at yourself, people. Come on. Party time, Mom. Stay horned. That's the point of all those 80s movies right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, God bless you. God bless you. I was watching that latest Rambo movie, and I felt like I was watching an adult version of Home Alone. Like he was building all those traps and stuff to kill everybody
So
with.
are you talking about the
Newest
one?
one, The Last Blood.
So it just came out. Any
Yeah.
good?
No, hell no.
No.
Horrible.
But it's all about
horrendous.
violence.
The worst thing you've ever seen, man.
Arrowed fires and all that good
One of
stuff.
these days, 20 years from now, we'll talk about how bad that movie was, and I'll tell you all about it. Yeah, that's the deal, man. Find me out on the road. WatchChad.com has all the tour dates. Go to where podcasts are offered. Download, listen, rate, review. Only 5-star ratings are accepted because we are worth it. And we want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chad Prather YouTube. Hit the little notification bell. Bing! It'll tell you every time we come on, Mondays through Thursday. Candice, the queen of the Ethiopians. You weren't too offended. You haven't blushed too much. I for a little while, you were sitting over there with your back turned. Get to it, Candace.
All in good fun. I mean, I've seen a couple of those movies.
She got a little nervous.
I'm actually amazed that, before we went to recording this, that being your age, you saw a few of those movies. I
Yeah.
mean, you're living in the woke generation here. I would have
know.
thought you would have bypassed it.
No, well,
Surprising at every turn.
All right.
Me.
I just don't like a sanitized, watered-down version of culture. That's what I don't like. It's like people are people. People do dumb things. But see, the issue is this. Here's where liberals differ from conservatives, okay? It's one thing if it violates your standards, like your personal tastes, like, oh, that's just crude.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. But, like, with liberals need everything to be watered down, and there can be no individuality. It's all about the collective.
Diversity.
So if there's anything, but the diversity has to become all together so that it is all whitewashed. So you can't have stereotypes in the liberal mind. You can't have any of that.
Right.
Because if you have any of that, well, then that's going to be, now you're isolating people, and that's just offensive. So if black people do a certain thing one way, Asian people do a certain thing, whatever, white people do a certain thing, then you're looking at it and you're like, oh, see, you're being a racist right now for saying that people do. No, it's not by the color of your skin. It is the culture that you live in.
Mm-hmm.
It's the culture you live in, and it's the things you take away from that culture. Those cultures are going to be different. You don't believe me? Let's get on a plane, grab your passport. I'll take you right now. We'll go to Kenya. We'll go to Nairobi. We'll go over there. And I'm telling you, you'll see cultures are different.
And the amazing thing to add on to that point you make is you would think the Democrat Party would want to celebrate the fact that folks are different.
Well, they used to say that.
Yeah, you celebrate the uniqueness of a person or of a culture or of a clan or wherever you're talking about anywhere in the world because there's unique things about everybody.
And that's it right there because you used to have that diversity and then tolerance. Those were the big words. Yeah. We want diversity. blah, blah, blah. And then we want tolerance. And both of those things have just been shot to hell. Flush it down
Yeah,
the
the
toilet.
left screwed it all
Left's
up.
done. That's why I'll say I'll take some classic liberals all day long.
Well, because that's
All day long, but they don't exist anymore.
not anymore.
They don't. Hey, love y'all. God bless you. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.